No, absolutely not. And I think that is the context, and this is what Brian McLaren is trying to draw our attention to, that it wasn't that the landowner or the manager was dishonest. It was that he was dishonest in the eyes of the owner because he wasn't willing to exploit the people. Because he wasn't willing to push them beyond their limits. Because he wasn't willing to take more than they could possibly give in order to survive. And so that's what made him dishonest. That's what made him a bad manager. Think about that, y'all. Think about the concept that would make you a bad manager because you don't want to exploit people. The owner was still making money. He just wasn't making as much as he had hoped he would. Doesn't that sound familiar in this day and age? Isn't there so much exploitation of putting people beyond what they're capable of? I mean, it could be student loans, it could be credit card companies, it could be any number of giant entities that exploit us as individuals. That's hard. And it's hard to get out of because once you have gotten trapped into it, unless there's a miracle that occurs where somebody comes in, an outside angel comes in to help you with finances, you're almost undoubtedly going to be stuck in that cycle for the rest of your life. Like, that's predatory, it's exploitative. And that's the kind of context that this landowner was trying to impose on all these farmers who were just trying to get by and live into a context of a occupying army coming in and taking over. That'd be like us, America, and okay, the only reason I'm saying this particular country is because it's large enough to do it. China coming in to our country and taking over, becoming an occupying force, and then taxing the bejesus out of us to the point that we would not be able to survive. So that's the context. And that's what Jesus is trying to help us and help the Pharisees and those who are around him understand about this particular moment in time, is that we cannot live into that understanding. I don't think, this is a terrible, terrible title for this scripture. It should probably be like the manager, the freedom fighter, or something like that. Where really, I mean, like the one that's bucking the system. The title of my sermon I said was "Live Like There's No Tomorrow," or "Live Like There's." Yeah, I think that's what I said. Live like there's no tomorrow. Is that what it says? Something like that. Living like there's no tomorrow. The reason that came to mind immediately for me was the idea that the manager had been put under such duress at this point that he's doing any and everything that he can to make sure that tomorrow can happen for him, right? What if we lived in such a way that we were able to live as though we don't care about tomorrow? We are worried about everything that happens today so that we can live to our fullest. I just played that little song as the prelude this morning from Tim McGraw, Live Like You Were Dying. What if we did that as the church? What if we lived as though each day were our last? Why? Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. Exactly. We are not guaranteed tomorrow. I mean, gosh, I just had an experience that made that so real for me. A Lutheran minister just passed away in his 30s from a car accident. And he left a wife and 2 children, and the church is in dreaded turmoil because of the grief that they're in right now over losing their minister, who they only had for like 4 or 5 years at this point. We are not guaranteed. We're not guaranteed anything in this life. And so why would we squander our time, our talents, and our resources when we should be living as though tomorrow may not come? How can I most fully live in to who God has called me to be right here and right now? That's who we are called to be. That's what that manager did. He was like, well, I'm done. I'm fired. What can I do to help my fellow people out before I'm gone? And so he calls them one by one and lessens their debts. And in doing that, the landowner was sort of grateful, was surprised and happy for this person, because not only was he still making money, he was getting his profits, but also he was pretty impressed with the savviness of this person. And Jesus is saying, listen, the people of the world, the people who aren't God followers, are more savvy with understanding their role to help their fellow person out than even us, the people of the light. In this specific moment, he's talking about those who do not follow Yahweh and those that do, and the fact that the religious establishment was living into that exploitative practice that the Roman Empire had brought in. I wonder sometimes if we don't have folks around us who may not be God-knowing, God-fearing people who are more savvy, who are better equipped and better able to care for the least of these than the church is. It's a sad thing to say, but we have become so focused on our stuff and our buildings and the things of this world that we do not put at an even weight the needs of the world. And this is not just New Hope. I'm not talking about New Hope. I'm talking about the church as a whole. Think of the billions, trillions of dollars that have been invested in stuff for churches. Think of what that money could have done for those in need. We're blessed that generations and generations ago, this building was created and we have a building to use. We don't pay for this building other than its upkeep and the utilities, right? It's been paid for. That's a blessing. We have this building and it is a blessing because we're not having to spend all of our resources to build or pay for a mortgage. We get the benefit of what our founding people did for us, which means, though, that puts a greater responsibility on us as the members of this church to use this space to the best of our abilities for God's glory, to be able to pull people in from the community to use this space so that it's not just sitting. If we're only using the building one day a week, is that being a good steward of the resources that we've been gifted by those who came before us? Our investment is in the time and the way in which we use these resources, not the actual having to pay off thing, having resources to pay the building off. That already was done for us. So how can we be good stewards of what we have? How can we use our time and our talents and our resources to show the community what God's love really looks like and to bring people into this space to use it for whatever reasons that they may need? That it wouldn't be a sense of, well, we use it on Sundays, we don't want it to get messed up. You know what? I don't know about y'all. Living in a space, it gets used, right? Your home, for instance. The upkeep on your home as a homeowner is so frustrating compared to renting. When you rent something, you call the landowner and you say, the manager, and you say, oh, something's broken, can you come fix this? And they hire somebody and they come. When you own your home, you have to call somebody in to fix that thing because you were using it, right? Because it was being used daily. I want us to have the expenses of having to upkeep things because it's being used daily. That's what we ought to be looking to do, to allow our space to be used so often that it has to be kept up. Right now, we use our space sparingly, not because we're trying to keep the public out, but just because we haven't considered what are the ways that we can draw them in that do not revolve around worship, right? Now, this is not a comfortable conversation for any churchgoer.